Let the floodgates open.
Hello, everybody.
Hey,
Can you hear me?
Yes.
yeah.
Can you say something? Because I can't hear you.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. No volume?
Huh. I don't have any sound. That's bizarre.
We all have sound.
Should I just try to sign on again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah,
Try that.
I'm gonna need.
That better?
We can hear you.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. And now I can hear you too.
Oh, good.
Some sort of glitch. I've been having all kinds of weird stuff going on with my internet and my phones. So anyway, yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order at the Shutesbury Selectboard. Today is Tuesday, January 3rd. And we've had some changes to the agenda. I'll go through it. We've moved a couple of things around, and I think we'll probably be passing over a couple of items tonight. So just please bear with us. So the first thing on the agenda is public comment. Then we have 2 sets of minutes for November 29th and December 6th. We've moved up the tax collector to 5:45 to talk about the Vadar contract. That's as in Darth Vader.
Right.
I just thought of that.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I think so. Then we have an appointment to the Board of Assessors. We'll discuss super briefly just the work zone policy. I know we're not prepared to finalize that tonight, so maybe just to check in on that. Contract for designer for the new library, I believe, is not ready. Is that correct? Okay, so we'll be passing over that. Then we have the Shutesbury recycling contract. It's a grant award, which we need to approve. Then we are going to be talking about the Kestrel Trust conservation restriction for the purchase of lot R15. That's the Pelham Hill Road parcel. And you'll probably hear more about that tonight than you ever imagined, because it will be on the warrant for the special town meeting that's coming up on January 19th. Then the special town meeting warrant review. So we have a number of articles, including on the Pearson, that same lot 15, AKA Pearson land. We have a PFAS funding warrant to pay for our licensed site professionals, tie and bond. Then the Energy Committee electrical aggregation warrant article. Again, the Vadar funding for the tax collector, and then discussion about the solar bylaw amendment articles. Those were all my previous list there was all for special town meeting, again on the 19th. And then we have review of the municipal vulnerability preparedness program. We have a special meeting of the select board a week from tonight. So we just want to discuss what's going to happen at that meeting, and also talk about MVP grant criteria and how we're going to decide what the priorities are for applying for that MVP grant, and then town administrator updates. I am guessing that we will probably move at least one item up earlier, because I think we'll have some gaps since we don't have the library contract. And Becky, I was going to propose that we talk about the MVP grant criteria earlier, to move that up maybe to where we were talking about the work zone / and contract for the library designer. That makes sense. Just because I think we'll have a gap there. And I don't believe that we need anybody else present for that select board discussion. Any questions about the agenda?
Nope.
Miriam, you have a question, or is this public comment?
A question about the agenda. Will the select board move on the appointment, my appointment to the CPC as a Concom representative?
We're not going to do that tonight because Linda's not resigning until she just notified us that she's resigning as of January 19th. So that will be on our next meeting.
All right, great, thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, so we have a little bit of time set aside for public comment, and I ask if you do have a public comment to use the raised hand feature and to limit your comments to a couple of minutes. So I see one hand. Leslie? You're muted.
Hear me okay now?
Yeah.
I'll learn one of these times. Two things I wanted to mention, dating back to last May, over the course of a couple of weeks, I had communications with the police chief, town administrator. One of the emails included the select board and the town clerk. And the emails consisted of my saying that there are no police logs that had been posted for quite some time. In 2020, the police logs were posted for 11 months. In 2021, for 6 months, the last one in October of 2021, and there were none posted in 2022. So in May, I initiated some correspondence asking why there were no police logs posted on the website. And I was told, in a sense, essentially that, okay, we're working on it and we'll make that happen. And that was on behalf of the town administrator, the police chief, and the town clerk. And that was, what, 8 months ago now. So I'm just asking why these aren't being posted on the police website. I know I, for one, would like to know what's going on with the police logs, what's going on with the police department, in addition to sand and art lessons, what's going on with patrols. I think it's important for all of us to understand that. Jill. So, and then
Okay.
the other piece, very quickly, you know, I hope there's a really compelling reason for having special town meeting on the 19th in an indoor venue with COVID as it is, RSV as it is, flu as it is. I think people refer to it as a triple epidemic. At this point in time, I would love to attend special town meeting, but not an enclosed building with numerous people around. So I hope that there are compelling reasons why you have to have a special town meeting indoors. And I hope you can explain that or address that when special town meeting comes up later in the agenda. Thanks.
Okay, I just want to remind folks that we do not, during public comment, it's strictly public comment and not a engaging with the select board. We hear your comments, so thank you. Penny?
Oh, I'll say one more thing. So I'll follow up in writing with what I've said.
Okay,
And I do hope I get a response because it's been 8 months since there's been this deafening silence regarding the police logs.
okay, Penny?
Well, I'm just here to wish you a happy 2023. I hope that it's going to be productive, peaceful, pleasant, whatever you're hoping for, I hope for the board. And I want to again reiterate that I know this is often a thankless task, but we thank you for doing it.
Thanks, Penny. I
Thank you,
appreciate
Penny.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Other public comments?
and I'm not on the screen now.
Les, you are still, you are not muted. Thank you. Just remind everybody that if you're not speaking, and this doesn't hold for the select board members and town administrator, please mute yourself. Okay, other comments? Okay, hearing none, I am going to move on to the reviewing the minutes from November 29th and December 6th.
Okay.
Any corrections, deletions?
The only reason we couldn't do the one on the 29th, Rita, is I wasn't here. And so I had to abstain. So we couldn't approve.
Oh, I
them.
see.
One vote. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So it went, because I wasn't at the last meeting.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Eric, any comments?
No, and I will move that we approve the minutes from November 29th, 2022.
Okay, I can't remember which set of minutes it was. Penny Jakes was there, and I think her name was spelled Panny instead of Penny. So I don't know if that was the 29th or the 6th. I just didn't make a note of it, but if you could just make that change, whichever one it was. So the motion's been made, and I will second it to approve the minutes of November 29th. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Stalker, aye.
Make
Carol,
peace.
aye.
I'll abstain. I'll abstain.
And Farrell, aye. Okay, we are on to the minutes of December 6th, 2022. And do I hear a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the December 6th minutes.
Second,
Okay, any discussion, any other changes? Did you find that
yeah,
anyone?
these are the ones where
Okay.
it's Panny.
Okay. All right, so with that correction, do I hear a motion to approve those?
Yes,
So
I'll make a
moved.
motion to approve. Yeah.
Second,
Okay. Oh, I think maybe we did that twice.
yeah, I think we did too. I thought we already did this.
I said, that sounds familiar. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Make peace, O'Neill. Aye.
Stalker, aye.
Farrell, aye. Okay, so the next item on the agenda, and I see Ellen McKay, our tax collector, town tax collector, is with us. And Ellen, I'm going to give you the floor to talk about the Vadar contract, which we're all very excited about. We know you are excited about it. So if you want to describe that to us, and then we do have it is on the warrant. So it's special town meeting.
Right. Okay, back in September, I received a letter from Point Software, which is the company I've been using since 1999 to handle all of our tax collecting and, software, whatever we were doing. Well, they sold their collector's package to a firm called QDS out of out of Connecticut. They already had 14 towns or 14 entities here in Massachusetts. Well, that presented a problem. Did I want to go with QDS, which was going to cost us money because it's not a direct rollover, and therefore have the same problems for Ryan and for Gail that we've had in the past, which means when I give Ryan a turnover, he then has to retype all the information into something that Gail can then use on Vadar, because they're both on Vadar. The other alternative, of course, was to go with Vadar. And I went and had FaceTime with both entities. They showed me their products. Their product wasn't that different, really. But the main thing was that by going with Vadar, then when I do a turnover to Ryan, it automatically goes into his system, which means it automatically goes into Gail's system. And it is going to be a much easier process. In other words, all the finance people will be on the same software. So needless to say, I decided to go with Vadar. Now, and Becky has a copy of the contract. This is a contract subject to funding. And the funding can occur either, like at special town meeting, which is why I'm going to talk to it again there, or it can occur at regular town meeting as a capital item, like the Vadar programs for both Ryan and Gail did. But it has to be funded. Now, the total funding for the software is $18,602.51. That's exclusive of the $5,390. That's a yearly fee. Now, that's over $4,000 less than I would be paying if I went with QDS, because they were keeping the fee the same as Point had it, which was well over $9,800. So in that respect, we're going to save money in the long run, because even though it's more expensive to go with Vadar, it is still cheaper as time goes on. We'll make up that difference in the money quite quickly. So all I'd like is permission or the select board to vote to accept the contract. And then we'll go further on when we get to the special town meeting piece. Any questions?
Melissa?
Hmm.
Do you have any questions?
No,
Eric?
You can imagine after 23 years with this company, it was a shock to have this happen. And we hadn't even heard rumors of it.
I have
Just so-
one question. Oh, go ahead, Eric.
Just out of curiosity, is there any chance this will happen with Vadar?
No,
Just
I don't think so.
Think so? Yeah.
No, I really don't think so. One of the problems with Point was they were not okay, I don't know what to say, how to explain it. They had not gotten so that their files were on the cloud at all. Everything was still, based on a database. And I don't think Jim was willing to do that kind of conversion for any of his stuff. So he only kept the piece that dealt with, oh gosh, what's it called? I can't think of it. One piece of his whole empire. Everything else went to someone else.
So you sort of brought it up. So if we move to Vadar,
Yeah.
can we assume that we have an automatic sort of backup on the cloud of?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Everything will be on the cloud. Everything's
that's-
on the cloud for the treasurer and the accountant now, as I understand it.
Right. Well, that's very good.
It is nice. It's very nice.
Ellen, can you explain what a turnover is?
Okay.
Because that's-
Every week by Mass General Law, I have to give to Ryan the money and the accounts that the money was used to pay. So if you paid your real estate bill today, next week, that along with all the other ones would go over to Ryan. It's a form, and it has all the different kinds of taxes it could possibly be, and how much money was collected in each of those pots, shall I say. And that goes over to Ryan, because what Gail does is Gail maintains records by the type of tax bill and the year. So 2023, fiscal 23, real estate, You know, if you paid it, it would be posted by her into that account against the total amount of the commitment. That's what we do. The commitment is X, and as the people pay it or it gets abated or refunds occur, it goes down and down and down till eventually it's zero. And that's the goal, is to make every commitment zero. Because that means everybody's either paid or statutorily had it abated or what have you. I might add that I just put the last two parcels for fiscal 22 on tax title. So now I have no balances outstanding for fiscal 22 in the real estate.
Any other questions for Ellen from select board members, Melissa or Eric? I see a hand up. We'll take a couple of questions since we have a little bit of time from folks who are here tonight. So Susie, did you have a question?
I have a finance committee question, a couple of them. One is, can the contract be signed when the money isn't going to be approved until special town meeting?
It's,
And
yes.
the second question is, will the money that you don't have to spend for the current contract just get applied over?
No, there's no money that won't be spent for the current contract. It starts on 7/1. But the the other question is about the, I lost it. What was your first question, Susie?
Can you approve a contract and then have the funding not approved until special town meeting?
Yes, you could do it until regular town meeting, because we have, there's a clause in there subject to funding in the contract. So should we not fund it, then they'll take the program away. Then I'll really be up a creek. So as a result, yes, they can sign. That was an issue that we got initially when we got the contract. They didn't have that. And Becky, worked with me and we worked with them to get that language in there. So it's now subject to payment. And the interesting thing is we could spread the payment out over several years, but why? I mean, some towns, granted, don't have the money to be able to afford $18,000, but we're lucky enough to have it. So we'll pay in one lump sum and get it over with. But they're very good at waiting. These companies know that we're on a fiscal year and our funding cycle is based on that fiscal year. And when things like this happen at the last minute, or when we're already in the fiscal year, there's nothing we can do. We've got to accept, they've got to accept the fact that they'll get paid late.
So they would start with the new fiscal year. That's when this contract would start.
Yes, but they will have to. What will happen is Point will go in at some point and do something to the data. And I don't even know what it is they're going to do. We have to pay to have it done. But then Vadar will have access to that data, because they're going to need anything that has a balance outstanding.
Sure.
Because if they don't, there's the amendment that came across for the now this is the amendment to the contract we already have, and somewhere in there, and I don't know where it is, because I'm having trouble reading it there. That's better. If for any fiscal year during the term of the agreement, funds for the discharge of the municipality's obligation under the agreement are not appropriated and authorized, or funds so appropriated and authorized are insufficient for that purpose, then the agreement shall terminate immediately, and municipality shall have no further financial obligation under the agreement. That's the bottom of number 2. So it's a subject to payment.
Okay, so I want to make sure I'm clear. That's we're doing it at the special town meeting because we're having a special town meeting and we want to do the Vadar contract, but it does not go into effect until July 1.
Well, yes, it doesn't go into effect, but actually I may well be using their program before that, for the simple reason I want to run parallel for a while. Because otherwise, I mean, it's a huge change in procedures. And I'm so comfortable with the other one that only makes sense to run parallel for a while. And yeah, Becky,
You're muted, Becky.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have called on her. It should be you, Rita. I'm sorry.
Saying, hey, take over, Ellen.
That's my problem. I'm too used to doing it.
You want to chair the rest of the meeting? Go ahead.
No, thank you. I know what's on the agenda.
The data exchanges will begin during the spring, and that's, so Ellen's been very worried about the whole process. And hers is, it starts earlier than the accountant had to start. So it's really helpful to have this settled so she can focus in on the funding piece with Finance Committee. And we will be doing the review with the Finance Committee tomorrow, but having it all lined up. Ellen has been, like she said, 23 years with the same program. This is a huge change for her, especially coming in your 47th year, Ellen.
Mhm. Yep.
So, but it's such a perfect match with having adopted the VADAR system for the accountant and the treasurer. It just brings the whole system together in a very good way.
Okay, any other questions?
Well, it seems like the backup piece of it itself is worth a lot, just that the fact that
Mhm.
we'll actually have backups that I assume more accurate than the ones we have, certainly than we have had in the past, which have
Mhm.
caused some problems.
Yes.
Okay, so this is an amendment to an existing contract.
Yes, the contract is, for the treasurer and the accountant, as I understand it. I was kind of surprised when they gave me just an amendment, but this is apparently how they do their work.
Okay. So do I hear a motion to approve the amendment to the VADAR contract for services for the town tax collector?
So moved.
Second,
Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Makepeace O'Neill, aye.
Stalker, aye.
Carol, aye. Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you very much. I'll hang around because I know I'm coming in again later.
Okay, sounds good. So the next item on the agenda is an appointment to the Board of Assessors, and April Stein is here. And April, do you want to tell us about most of us know who you are, but maybe just reintroduce yourself.
Well, I feel like next to Ellen, I feel like a newcomer because I've only been involved in town politics really for a bit more than 30 years. So what I would bring to the assessors is, I've been on the Finance Committee. I don't remember how many years, but a number of years. I've been on and off, now back on the Personnel Board, and I've spent 9 years on the Select Board. So I really feel like what I bring to the table is really understanding how the town operates and how the town financially operates and the interactions between the different departments and the different people. And I look forward to, I feel like I work well with other people, and I look forward to exploring something different. It's another way of looking at the same town that I've been involved with for many years.
Great, thanks, April. And we have this opening as a result of the resignation of Jeff Quackenbush. Is that
No,
correct?
Susan Reyes.
Oh, Susan Reyes. Okay, so will we be fully?
We will be for the moment. Jeff's resignation takes place January 31st.
Okay, so coming after that, right? Okay, we'll have another opening on the Board of Assessors.
Yes.
Okay, anybody, Melissa or Eric, any questions for April?
No, I think we're lucky to have her. That's great.
Yes. I'll ditto that.
Okay, so do I hear a motion to appoint April Stein to the Board of Assessors?
So moved.
Second,
Any further questions? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Makepeace O'Neill, aye.
Stalker, aye.
Carol, aye. Congratulations, April. Thank you for your
Thank you.
willingness to serve, and I assume that becomes effective immediately. Susan Reyes is off already.
There's a meeting coming up in January, and I believe Leslie emailed April this afternoon.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I haven't
right.
looked at my email yet. Okay, good. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I know at the last meeting, the Melissa had presented the work zone policy review, work site policy. And I believe that there was some discussion and some potential edits to that policy. And so it's not ready this evening, and including because I need to, I've been unavailable and I need to provide some comments too. So, and I have not yet done that, but I will pass those through. And so what I'd like to do is to defer the worksite policy to our next regular meeting, which is on the January 17th. Okay, does that work for you, Melissa?
Yeah, it does. And I apologize. I was down and out for a few days, so.
It's fine. I've been there myself. Okay, so and then after that, we have the on the agenda, we had the contract for the designer for the new library, and as explained to me, that that contract is not ready yet, in large part because what happens with these kinds of contracts is that the designer has a number of subs, so subcontractors, and I believe in this case there are 8 different subcontractors working for the designer. So between the holidays and trying to corral 8 different companies into an agreement with the designer, it has not yet happened. Even though we have selected the designer, they're going through their process now of selecting and signing agreements with all of their subs. So I didn't, Becky, I don't know if we heard any tentative time, not yet, but I would assume that we'd look to probably put this on the agenda for also for that meeting on the 17th.
Okay,
That makes sense. Okay, so we have what I suggested earlier, and if it's okay with you, Melissa, and you, Eric, that we move up the discussion. That one of the last items on the agenda was to review the municipal vulnerability meeting that we're going to have on January 10th, and just to move that up now. Does that work for you? Okay, I'm just looking for my notes because I read some notes about this. Okay, just a quick preview of what that meeting on the 10th is about. So annually, the State Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness, also known as MVP program, makes funding available to help communities plan and actually do implementation for projects related to climate change and resiliency. And last year, we, town of Shutesbury, went through a process talking to different town committees and boards, and then we submitted an application for MVP funding. And Becky, I believe it had to do with kind of dirt roads, stormwater. And we did not get funded. And so there were a number of things that fortunately, what they do is they will do a kind of post-mortem. The MVP staff will do a post-mortem after they've made all the grant, awards, so they can talk to people about why, we didn't receive funding. And so I'm going to have Becky talk a little bit just to highlight a couple of things that we heard back from them. And they have a two-step process. And the two-step process is that the MVP staff invites communities to come in to actually preview with them our ideas about what we might want to, we might want to ask for funding for. And so I call it kind of a pre-application process. And there are two deadlines related to that pre-application process, I believe January 19th and then February 3rd. And then after that, then they will talk with us about, what the projects that we're thinking about and give us feedback. And then after that, there's no more discussion. They put out their request for proposals. And then we hopefully have a pretty good indication from that earlier conversation about what might or might not get funded. So what we're hoping to do next week is we have invited both townspeople are more than welcome to join us, and the committees that have an interest in the municipal vulnerability, the MVP program, to come and meet with the select board and talk about projects. So just, we have done two major kind of studies leading up to the MVP program. We did a hazard mitigation plan. And we actually had a planning grant from MVP, from municipal vulnerability. So we have two pretty detailed documents that talk about all of the town's vulnerabilities having to do with climate change, everything from, how it impacts stormwater to how it, dealing with culverts and bridges. So in the case where we have much more rain, heavier rain events, those kinds of things that we can expect, to have with climate change, and how do we prepare for this? So as I said, we have these two documents, which are pretty detailed and have set priorities and have, lots of information in them. So that's a good place to start. But what I wanted to do tonight, and I'll first have Becky talk about what we heard back from Andrew from the MVP staff. But what we want to do tonight is just begin to think about the kinds of things, the kind of criteria, or what criteria we might want to use as we are evaluating the suggestions that come forth, because ultimately the application does come from the select board. But I know already there's lots of discussion amongst committees in town about what their priorities are. So we have to manage that somehow. And I think the best way to manage it is by being clear about our, some sort of review of criteria, like looking at how we prioritize what we apply for. And I'll just mention one more thing. During this pre-application period, they will talk to us about a maximum of 2 projects. So I was pushing, let's put 3 before them, but they've been saying 2 projects. So Becky, maybe if you can just give us a quick summary of the kinds of things that we heard back from the MVP staff when we didn't get funded.
Okay. So we had a very ambitious grant proposal. Michael DeCara was helpful in creatives and writing summaries. He worked with Rita and I. But the feedback, unfortunately, that we got was that it was too ambitious. They really want the projects to be successful. And so if they think you're trying to do too much, that it's a red flag. They want the project to be doable within a year, ideally. We had tried to go into a second year implementation process, and I think they get nervous about that, especially when you load up what you're trying to accomplish. We were trying to accomplish bylaw changes and implementation of new stormwater, potentially a new stormwater bylaw. We were looking at specific issues where the roadways would intersect, where you'd have a dirt roadway and a hard surface, and what kind of problems occur at that point. But we hadn't pinpointed an exact geographic location. They are most comfortable when they can point to the project. They can say, you can see our project at, at the bottom of Montague Road, right before the dam, or you can see the project at Lake Wyola if you turn left onto Lakeview Road. They want it to be doable. They want it to be, if you're delving into regulations, they want you to give yourself enough time to really prepare the public and go through a full political process of, doing events and educating. They are big on education as a piece of what you're doing. And unfortunately, our proposal had everything in it. Because of that, they also mentioned that they felt we needed to spend more time with the budget elements and be much more specific. I had gotten a quote from, I think it was Fuss and O'Neill for the engineering work, but they felt that one firm could not handle all that we were putting out there. So as far as criteria, I think we want to make sure that the tasks aren't too broad. We want to make sure that if you're, if we're presenting a project that, like say if it's something concrete, if we were presenting a culvert in the middle of town, I don't think there is one, but if we were, they would want to know that the permitting had been begun and that it for sure was going to be a success. So I just want you all to, if you're looking at submitting an idea for a grant, just think through the project and figure out how you can really explain the details of it. You want it to be really focused and you want it to be a success.
So I just want to mention that what the state is talking about is $20 million. And that was sort of the initial amount. We suspect that it might be higher, but we won't know how much is available until the actual request for proposals comes out. So, and as I said, that will be sometime after that early, I think we expect it's probably going to be March. I think that's maybe when it was last year, late February, March is when applications, when they'll be open, and then.
It's earlier, Rita.
Is it earlier?
Yes,
And do we know when the applications would be due? I didn't see that in any of their
I think
literature.
you're right, the application is due in March, but they come out, I think, in the first week of February. They come out quickly after the 20th.
After, but there's a February 3rd date too, which is the deadline for getting ideas in. So there has to be a little bit of time after that. But anyway, we're on a pretty, it probably will be, and it was the last time, a pretty ambitious timeline. Miriam, I see your hand, but right now I just want to, the select board is talking about criteria. So after I'll take a question. I wrote down a couple of ideas about, and I think, Becky, your suggestion about sort of the way I described it was that the projects would be discrete and achievable. And I guess that 1 year timeline, maybe that we say discrete and achievable within a year.
Sounds good.
Another thing that I had identified was just that the projects, that the priority projects would have been included either in our MVP planning grant or in our hazard mitigation plan. And there might be an exception to that, something unusual that just, surfaced, but that we did go through a process, a fairly detailed and lengthy process, putting together both of those plans. And they have a lot of items listed, everything, it ranges in stormwater and municipal solar, and I can't even remember everything else, but there's a lot in there. And they were prioritized within those two documents. And so I'm fully expecting that that the committees that worked on those plans will participate in the meeting on the 10th.
Just a point of information, how much money are we talking about here? I mean, I know we don't know the answer, but
we don't, it can be hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean, they make awards. I believe that, just as an example, that culvert that was done in Leverett on, what is that called there? Is that, it's not Shutesbury Road.
I think it's
Road,
Shutesbury
yeah.
Road, yeah.
So that was an MVP grant, and that had to be at least a couple of $100,000, Becky, do you think? So yeah, the planning money tends to be smaller amounts of money, but the implementation is larger amounts of money. And if, so they've funded stuff up to $1 million.
Yeah.
Projects up to $1 million. But again, what we have to be aware of as we're thinking about projects, if we do in fact have that 1 year deadline, which maybe isn't absolutely rigid, but it's something we should be working towards. As Becky pointed out, if there's engineering or other work that has to be done in advance, that we know that it's achievable within a discrete. So it's a discrete project, and we have a viable schedule.
Yeah.
Knowing that, given what happens with public construction projects, the amount of time everything takes, they understand that too, but we just want to be, aware of that as we're putting our ideas out there. Just a couple of other things that I wrote down was that that I think, along with it being a high priority, both within the MVP plan that we have and our hazard mitigation plan, that we have support, that it's going to be, that it will have some positive impact in town. So I think that sort of goes without saying. And that the last one that I had jotted down was that there's some time sensitivity or urgency to do it. That we can use that as a criterion as we're thinking, because the list is going to be long. And so I think it's going to be a challenge to pick those top two items, but we want to pick two that meet the criteria that we're talking about, and that we think will get funding. And I guess that's the other piece of it, is that that we think it has a high likelihood of its success in getting funding.
And that's what I wrote down as you were talking, Rita.
Good.
Picking two or one, maybe, one in two different price categories.
Rita, I just wanted to mention the MVP plan that was put together by that we had the planning grant to write it ended up on the town administrator page of the town Shutesbury.org website, if anyone's interested in reviewing it as they prepare.
Is there somewhere we could put it,
You
like
can put
on
it on the
the,
homepage.
yeah, I
'Cause
think
I had to
both,
search for it.
yeah, I think both the, since we're having this meeting next week, that both the hazard mitigation plan and the MVP plan would be good to just have available. Links to those. Does that make sense?
So I'm going to leave them where they are and ask that the link be put up on the homepage.
Okay. That's great.
That's a good plan.
Other suggestions about just criteria that we want to be thinking about for selecting a project?
Can it dovetail with another project? For example, the library. I mean, can you build solar, let's just say, at the, that will benefit the library as a priority? I mean, can you do that?
Good.
Can you dovetail it with another project?
Sure.
Okay.
I think this funding is discrete, but there's no reason why it couldn't be, linked to something else.
Mhm.
That's a good idea. I like that idea. Dovetailing.
So maybe, yeah. So maybe
I just want to put
Doesn't
out
have to be the library. Could be anything.
dovetailing, but again, make sure it's well-defined and
Sure.
clear that it meets all the objectives of the municipal vulnerability plan.
Yeah, so we don't have their, I mean, I think we could probably, and maybe we should do this too, Becky, is you have the RFP from last year available, or at least available to the town committees. I'm not sure if it needs to be up, because that has all the criteria that they use in making their decisions about funding. And I imagine that it's not going to change dramatically this year. So at least it's a starting point.
Okay.
I think it makes sense to have, I don't know if there's a way to do it, but so we could see plans that actually were funded.
There's
think-
tons of them available online.
Yeah, if you go and we could just have a link to that you could see, yes, all
Right.
the different kinds of projects that were done by other communities.
Right.
Yeah,
That'd
they
be great.
actually have a good website, the MVP program. So I don't know, maybe, Becky, you had sent out an email to all the town committees, and maybe if you could send out a reminder and then have ways to access. So we had the MVP, as Eric was suggesting, like the MVP website for people to look at projects if they're unfamiliar with what's done, the hazard mitigation plan, the municipal vulnerability plan, and then what was the third thing? There was one other thing.
The RFP.
Oh, the RFP from last year, just to make sure that it's clear that was last year's RFP. I think that will help inform folks before the meeting on the 10th. So Melissa and Eric, I just want to give you a chance before I take any questions. Anything else?
No, I think you've given us a good homework assignment, but 14 links to this. Don't worry.
And Melissa is not going to be at the meeting next
I'm not
week.
going to
Oh,
be.
good.
So Eric, it's up to you and me to
I
like
guess so.
thoroughly studied and memorized everything.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, I expect that we'll have a good discussion. And we already have some information. I think the Energy Committee already submitted something. So, okay, so we'll take a couple of questions. Miriam?
Hi, thanks. We haven't, I'm on the ECAC committee. We haven't made our recommendations yet. We have 2 working groups that are going to be meeting in the next 10 days to generate some recommendations. So I don't think you have recommendations from us yet. And I mentioned we have on our homepage also links to the MVP grant and the hazard mitigation plan. And I just wanted to share some, I think these are all great criteria. And I just wanted to share some information that I've gathered because I've been to some trainings on MVP through the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions. And I've had some networking conversations with some conservation agents from other communities that have successfully implemented MVP. And was part of a informal conversation with Juliana Buza, who's a senior scientist at Fuss and O'Neill. And maybe Becky knows her.
She was the person who handled our grant.
Great.
We hired Julie to, so if you had been to any of the MVP sessions, you would have met Julie.
Yeah, I was. I was on some of those. I was on one of the working groups. But anyway, I think it's great because she's kind of a regionally very experienced person in terms of helping towns shepherd MVP applications. But I just want to share a couple of pieces of information that I gathered recently from discussions I've had with her, which one is that some of what makes a competitive grant is evolving so that projects that were funded a few years ago, when there weren't as many applications in the pipeline, are no longer as competitive. For example, I asked her opinion about, for example, a culvert assessment or a townwide engineering assessment for stormwater. And she said that those kinds of assessments are not as competitive as they used to be, that as Becky's mentioning, they're looking more for discrete projects as opposed to kind of assessments that would then lead to action projects. And then the other piece that I learned is that one of the things that makes projects more competitive is particularly around the stormwater issues or environmental engineering issues is if they're utilizing nature-based solutions. And so I think that might be something for the town to keep in mind. For example, my understanding is if you're looking at dams, dam removal is scored as being more competitive than dam repair because it represents a nature-based solution. So that's just an FYI I wanted to share. Thanks.
Thanks, Miriam. Other comments or questions? So Becky, do we have a sense of how many people have folks indicated that they're coming next Tuesday?
No, they haven't.
Okay. But I know, as Miriam said, I know the Energy Committee has been doing a lot of work, and I looked at the calendar and I saw so many meetings. And so I know they're doing a lot of work to come forth with their recommendations, but we already do have a summary from them of some of the priorities. So great. So get the word out. That is, what time are we doing this at?
I have to look.
Okay. I don't remember either. Check the town calendar.
Yeah, no, I have to look.
Okay. For the meeting on MVP. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Shutesbury Recycling Grant Award, Contract and Grant Award. And is anybody here from the Recycling Committee, or are you going to cover this, Becky?
I'm going to cover it.
Okay.
So Gary is always busy bringing us more money to help us pay for compost bins and recycle bins, and some of the grants even allow for the purchase of trash bags, so helps to subsidize that. This is the Recycling Dividend Program grant. And we've been awarded $2,205 from DEP. And there are, we have to make sure that, you know, that we follow all the regulations. The grant award is based on the number of households. So it's basically demographics. And we get point values for how much trash service is provided. And recycling. So communities are broken into different sizes, and we fall into the $2,000 bracket. And as we continue to score points by making sure that we have a way to take care of bulky items. So that's why one of the incentives for the recycling committee to hold the bulky waste days was to help get grant money. But that is, we still get that item checked off because of our relationship with Leverett, and the fact remains that the community has a place to take their bulky items. And that we have programs that work towards solid waste reduction, and that the town has recycling, we have a town policy to use recycled paper when we put out the newsletter, and all the paper that we use in town hall, we make an effort to go recycled. So all these things in combination make us eligible for these annual grants. And I have a copy of the grant. It needs one signature by Rita Farrell. And after we submit it, we should receive another $2,000 to help with all our recycling needs.
Great. So just my signature, and we need a vote to authorize me to sign that. So are we actually applying for this, or are we
No,
just receiving it?
We're receiving it.
Okay.
The application, Gary had done the application.
Okay. I just
and
wanted to
we're
make
just-
sure.
We're just getting the award, but it
Okay.
has to be signed.
It has to be signed. Okay. So questions, Eric or Melissa, on the Recycling Grant Award?
Sounds good
Just
to
a
me.
Big thank you.
Anytime we get money, right?
Right, yeah, right.
Just a big thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so do I hear a motion to authorize the chair to execute the RDP Contract Recycling Grant Award?
So moved.
Second,
Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Makepeace O'Neill, aye.
Stalker eye.
Carol, aye. Okay, we are right on schedule, I think, 1 minute ahead. That's pretty impressive. All right, so the next item on our agenda is going to be really fascinating for maybe one or two people, but it is important. And it leads into discussion we're going to have about it leads into one of the articles that's going to be on the special town meeting warrant. So Donna McNichol, who's our town council, has joined us. Miriam is here. Bridget Likely from the Kestrel Trust is here. Anybody else that I'm missing who might, Matteo Pangalo from The Community Preservation Chair of the Community Preservation Committee is here this evening. And so I think what we need to talk about are where things stand. And this all relates to, just a little bit of quick background, this relates to the acquisition of it's called a bunch of different names, but the Pearson parcel on, also known as R15, which is the piece of land that the town is going to acquire, which is located on Pelham Hill Road, and I think bordered by a fairly large parcel. I was going to call it schoolhouses, Baker Road.
R15.
No, what is it?
Baker Road on R15
Baker.
on Baker Road, yeah.
Okay, so it's R15, so Baker Road, and then it faces on also on Pelham Hill. So it's a complicated transaction because money is coming in from a number of different sources, including 2 different sources from the town of Shutesbury, and then the Kestrel Trust, and then the Kestrel Trust is, some of their money is federal money through something called the Forest Legacy Program. And question was asked earlier about why are we having this town meeting, you know, in the middle of January, and when we have to have it indoors. And the reason is because we have to have a couple of votes related to this acquisition. And if we don't have those votes, we will lose all the funding, or lose the federal funding. And we will not be able to acquire this parcel. So we have a deadline of, I believe it's January 27th to close on the acquisition of this parcel. And if that, if we don't have all of the pieces in place, it will not happen and the funding goes away. So that is the reason why we're having a special town meeting, and we have taken the opportunity to both clear up some issues with previous, potentially with the previous meeting at town meeting vote. And then we have some other kind of very urgent things that we'll be talking about for this, for the town meeting warrant. So I'm not sure who wants to lead this discussion about the conservation restriction and where things stand. Maybe Donna, and then other folks chime in by raising your hand, but maybe you could explain what we need to do.
Sure. I want to thank Matteo for his emails. Really, I think he's just done an excellent job of clarifying what the CPC's role is. And I think he's really simplified the whole matter. The money to purchase this property is coming approximately $197,000 from the federal grant Forest Legacy into the town of Shutesbury, $45,000 from the CPC to Kestrel Trust as part of the purchase price, and then $20,000 from the Conservation Commission as a portion of the purchase price. And then Kestrel has raised approximately $2,800 in private funding. The purchase price is $265,000. Kestrel bought this from the Pearsons. They're selling it to the town of Shutesbury. And given the statute on community preservation funds, we need to give the conservation restriction back to a third party because we're the owners. And so that conservation restriction will be going back to Kestrel. So this 30 acres, R15 or whatever we're calling it at the moment, will be purchased for conservation and passive recreation. It will be under the care, custody, and jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission, and purchased with CPC funds going from CPC to Kestrel. That's what the grant agreement says. The $197,000 plus from the state through the through the state from the federal legacy, an additional money from Kestrel, and 20,000 from conservation. We started going down a rabbit hole when we started thinking about the conservation restriction that needs to go on the property pursuant to the Community Preservation Act, and getting the funds in time to close. January 27th is the close of the grant. We have to have it closed by then, or we don't get the 197,000. So obviously the whole thing would fall apart. Mateo did an excellent job of pointing out that the vote's been taken. The money's to go to Kestrel. Both Rita and Mateo, and I believe Miriam, pulled up guidances on CPC funds that clearly indicated that as long as we have every intention of putting a CR on, it doesn't have to happen at the time of closing, but has to happen within a reasonable time thereafter. Just so everybody understands, Kestrel was good enough to send the CR and the CR language to the state. I think it might have been last June. We're still waiting for approval from the state, and that's the hang up on that piece. In all fairness to the state, they get a gazillion of these documents. They all have to be read and gone over carefully. And we're just in the queue. And when we'll get out of the queue and get approved so that the select board can convey the CR to the Kestrel Trust, we just don't know. But I think with all the documentation that everybody's provided me within the last 48 hours and reviewing it, I think we can just go forward. The one thing that Mateo sent that gave me a little pause was that it was fairly clear that if the CR wasn't part of the original package, then it may have to go under Article 97, which means votes of the legislature and town meeting and everything else. So I've added additional language to the warrant. Becky, I hope you got that. If you didn't, I can give it to you. Just making it very clear on the warrant article that part of this package is that a conservation restriction to Kestrel Trust will be put on the property. So I think that really takes care of the CR and the funding from community preservation. The only note that I would add to that is there's also a note in one of the documents Mateo or Miriam or Rita or whoever sent that says that even if you don't get state approval, there's a way to put a permanent CR if you don't get state approval. So I think that what I recommended in my most recent email is that let's calendar that 3 months from now. If the state still hasn't moved, if we still haven't gotten approval on the CR, we may want to look into that alternative of putting a permanent on in another way to meet the requirements of the Community Preservation Act, but not being so far from the closing that anybody questions whether the CR was part of the original plan. Becky, did you need something?
Oh, I was just making sure I made changes to the warrant article about an hour and a half ago, and I was checking the email to see if you sent through any more.
I did.
Okay, I'm looking for them.
Yeah, I just sent it. It's really simple, Becky. It's just, let me get it for you now so it doesn't get lost. All I did was add after, in the first article after 0 Pelham Hill Road, Shutesbury, Franklin County, Mass, to be held for conservation and passive recreation purposes, I added this language.
Oh,
Ready?
yeah.
And further subject to a conservation restriction to the Kestrel Land Trust, Inc.
I'm sorry, to further subject to,
A conservation restriction
okay,
to the Kestrel Land Trust, Inc. And that's in Article 1 after passive recreation purposes. And then it'll go on to say, and to appropriate $265,000.
into So right before and to appropriate 260.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
That way it just makes it clear it's part of the original intent, which the articles that everybody sent me seem to suggest that if you put a conservation restriction on after the fact, and it wasn't part of the original conveyance or purchase of the property, then it becomes subject to Article 97, which some people may know means that then we have to go to town meeting, get a 2/3 vote. Then we have to go to the legislature and get a 2/3 vote of both houses in the legislature in order to do the CR. So just to avoid us having to do that step, I just wanted to make it very clear that this is all part of one package. So the warrant for the special town meeting, because the grant's coming to the town of Shutesbury, in order for the town of Shutesbury to purchase property, they need an appropriation. The first warrant article is basically to appropriate the money to buy 0 Pelham Hill Road for $265,000. And then the second article is to authorize the select board to convey this conservation restriction if and when we get approval from the state, or if we don't, then we'll create our own, so that there is a conservation restriction on it pursuant to the Community Preservation Act.
So Donna, I wanna, this has been so confusing. I just wanna step through like a simple, give you my understanding of what's happening and see if that's correct.
Sure.
Because I'm probably not the only person here who has that question, but so Kestrel has already purchased the property. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And so we are in essence we're authorizing the select board to purchase the property from Kestrel. The town to purchase the property from Kestrel.
Right.
And so I had been under the impression that the whole kind of grant agreement and everything else with Kestrel wasn't in play here, but in fact it is, because Kestrel already has the Forest Legacy money in hand. Is that right?
No.
They don't. Oh,
No,
that's what this is about.
That's the biggest rub in this.
Okay.
Is that you have to sign that contract tonight
Okay.
and the authorization, get it to the state, to Lindsay Nordstrom at the state. And Lindsay has indicated to us that when we do that, she doesn't need any further paperwork, that's putting in an invoice to get the money.
I
And
see.
basically, once that's done and all the documents are agreed on between Kestrel and myself, which I think we're there. We just wait and pray that 197 gets here by January 25th, which I've said is the closing date, by January 27th at the latest. As long as that money comes in between now and then, we're good to go. If that money doesn't come in, there's nothing we can do.
So the CPC vote is not a problem. The original annual town meeting vote is not a problem.
Nope, they can just give the check, the 45,000 for the closing and make it out to Kestrel land, which is the way the vote was.
Okay, all right, good, because that was confusing.
Yes, it was.
And
it was really confusion on my part more than anybody, so.
And then there was money that was coming from the Conservation Commission. Miriam, I see your hand, so I'll let you, I just want to make sure I understand this. And then there's some Kestrel. So Kestrel is basically making up the acquisition with these different sources, including the CPC money and money from the Conservation Commission.
Right, we're basically paying Kestrel what they paid to Pearson.
Right.
And then we're putting a CR on it and giving the CR to them as the third party.
Okay. Okay, great. Good. Miriam, why don't you go ahead?
And I really appreciate everybody's patience with my many, many emails. I'm sorry for flooding you all with the questions, but I feel like the process was good because we're getting to a resolution, which is great. And I'm really appreciate everybody's hard work around this. Thank you. And I also just want to thank Kestrel, since Bridget is here, and I don't, for the people who are at this meeting who may not be aware, you know, Kestrel has played a really key role in making this project possible, including purchasing the property in advance, but also in addition to contributing these private funds, they've also raised funds to cover all the closing costs and the due diligence that needs to be done, including the survey and some additional title insurance and a long laundry list of things that were quite costly that the town doesn't have to pay for. So it's a very unique situation. And while it seems super complicated, we're just very, very fortunate. So thank you. Thank you, Kestrel. And thank you for being patient with us. And I just wanted to let you know that the Conservation Commission is recommending that this parcel be named in the same way that Kestrel has been naming it, which is West Quabbin Woodlands Conservation Area, or WQW for short. So that is our recommendation. And for people who don't know in terms of the time frame, we reviewed with Kestrel the draft conservation restriction in June, and that's when the Conservation Commission approved it. And then Kestrel reviewed it, finalized it, and they submitted it in September. So it was submitted to the state in September, not June.
Oh, okay, sorry.
And it sounds like, Donna, what you're saying, and this is good news, is that you don't think we need to go through any complicated acrobatics about loaning money or
No, I
transferring
don't
money.
think so. I don't think
Great.
so.
Well,
After
that's
reviewing
wonderful.
everything, I think that the vote was the vote, and I think Mateo's just spot on.
Okay,
That ends the CPC role unless the CR doesn't go on.
okay. That's wonderful. I'm really glad to hear that. Sounds like we were talking about having a joint meeting with the CPC next week. I don't know if Mateo, you can mention whether you think that's still necessary. And so we still need to vote. We still need the warrant articles in order to approve the purchase, because that wasn't made explicit in the May 22 annual town meeting warrant, and to explicitly say that we're granting the CR, even though of course we have to grant a CR. That's a condition of the CPA Act. We don't have any way of
Right,
not.
but it's still a conveyance of an interest in land the town owns.
Okay,
And so it still needs town approval.
okay, thank
I
you.
just want to recognize Mateo.
Yeah, I mean, in response to your question, Miriam, I don't know that there's any action that the CPC could take. So I don't know if it's necessary for us, if it is necessary for us to meet. I think, thank you to Donna for the clarifications about the sort of the legal background here, and also to Miriam for identifying that legal advisory from the Mass Land Trust Coalition, which sort of clarified this kind of unclear part of the CPA language. I think at this point, it seems pretty clear to me that, there's no additional role for the CPC to take at this point. So I don't know if it makes sense for the committee necessarily to have to meet. I do think, and one thing I do notice, I think Becky, you're sharing the warrant draft. And this is actually related to a question that Donna asked in an email. It says 45,000 from the Community Preservation Fund, but the vote was for 50,000. We asked town meeting for 22,000 from the Open Space Recreation and 28,000 from the reserve, which is what the warrant article from the original town meeting said and was approved. So I don't know where the 45 came from or how it changed. From 50.
It was
can I
broken
respond?
into two. It's broken into two pieces. The 45 was the acquisition, and then $5,000 was under sort of the recreation heading for a parking, some parking spaces at the kind of trailhead there. So it was done separately.
Okay, thank you.
Well, it wasn't done separately in the vote.
The vote, it said 45 and 5. in the
No, it
town.
said 28 and 22.
Uh,
I mean, that's what I've got on my records.
yeah,
And the Kestrel grant agreement says 50 or 22 and 28. So I'm just trying to, I don't know that we have to take this meeting to figure that out. But there's an issue there. I mean, if in fact we need to amend this warrant article to say 50 and add and amenities or improvements to the property or something, we can certainly do that. I can do that. We can do that on town meeting floor if we need to. But we need to figure out why the vote at town meeting and the grant agreement says 28 and 22. And we know the purchase price only requires 45,000 of the 50.
the intent was to set some money aside for parking. And
I've got the warrant article. Let me pull it.
yeah, and
The warrant article says, Article 19 does not specify the parking. It just says,
It doesn't.
no, it just says 22,000 from open space recreation
28.
from the budget.
Yeah, it doesn't say anything about parking or anything.
Well, I guess the question is if we gave Kestrel $50,000 and it's $5,000 more than, and they're selling the property, we're acquiring it from them, we're giving them more money, and then they're not doing any improvements. And the improvements that we wanted to have there, to have some parking spaces, will not get done.
Well, we can add it to this warrant article.
I believe the parking was a requirement.
Whoever has the
That was me, I'm sorry. That
Okay.
was my background. I think that with the parking improvements were kind of a requirement.
yeah, it was part of the award. That's right, Miriam.
There was, and I'm sorry for this confusion because I may be completely confused about this, but I had some thought in the back of my head, and maybe Bridget, you're here and you'll remember that there was some issue around the there's a $5,000 issue, that there was some question about maybe the Conservation Commission needing to come up with an additional 5,000. And I thought, my memory was that it needed to be for the parking area, but maybe I'm completely remembering that.
I mean, I'll have to go back, Miriam, and double check if we've had more recent conversations, but my memory was that we ended up having to request the 5,000 from CPC because we originally were going to do it through the Concom reserve funds, and you clarified that recreation cannot be pulled from Concom reserve funds only.
Okay.
But it can be for CPA, it's recreation, and there are, and as Matteo has researched, and I also looked up, parking is included in recreation, and open space and recreation is one category within the Community Preservation Act. So I guess, how do we get the parking done here?
I mean, it's in the budget. It's in the budget, which is attached to the grant agreement. So it's a requirement of the grant agreement, and it's in the budget as a CPA expenditure. It's just that cost is not then transferred into the article language in the
Yeah, should have been amended.
Yeah, as of right now, the way all the documents are written, Kestrel would need to spend the 5,000 on the parking. Because right now, this article really should be changed to appropriate 270, 50 from community preservation, et cetera, and make it clear if the grant agreement budget is attached, that 5 of that 50 is for Kestrel to create parking. The grant agreement says 50 to Kestrel. There's nothing in Article 19 that says anything about parking. And just talks only about the purchase. So if we don't do it that way, and Bridget obviously will have to go back and make a determination if we can do it this way, then it means that we don't have authority to spend the CPA funds on parking, even though that may have been the intent, because it says just purchase in the warrant article. And the grant agreement is for 50,000 from CPA, not 45. So we have to change that vote and the document, or if Kestrel can just take the 5,000 and do the parking, and that's part of the grant agreement in the budget, then we wouldn't have to change anything.
Donna, this is Miriam. Could we use the reserve conservation trust fund for parking development?
I don't think so.
Boy,
That'd be,
we'd have to look into that, Miriam.
okay.
But even if you did, you aren't awarded the money. So, I mean, we can certainly spend less than 50,000.
I was just thinking that, I was just
thinking.
thinking if the 50,000 went to Kestrel and we only contributed 15,000 to the sale price and then use that reserve 5,000 for the parking. But it sounds like that may not be an option.
Bridget, what do you think about Kestrel doing the parking? Is that a possibility?
I mean, it's one of those things where like maybe we could help arrange it and then. Yeah, it was not in the vision for Kestrel, you know, since we're not owning this in fee, to be the ones paying for the parking and developing the parking.
We're giving you the money for it.
Yes, but.
Right, but they don't own the land, they just
Right,
own
I
the
see.
CR on it.
Right.
Can I ask a question about the budget in the grant agreement or for the project then? Who added the parking area construction under associated costs? Was it added by Kestrel or was it added by?
No, it's added by the committee, the CPC.
And who is it a requirement of, the CPC or DCR?
CPC. The idea was that we have this conservation area and there's nowhere to park.
Right, right.
So to have some off-road parking, because you can't really park on Pelham Hill Road or on Baker Road for that matter.
Everybody's,
So if we left it at 45 and amended the town meeting vote said 50, right? Okay.
Yeah, but you can spend less than the
Yeah.
town meeting vote. I think I'll
So let's
defer to
just leave
Mateo
it.
on that and you, but I think
Yeah.
that, you know, if you have an appropriation for a certain amount and it turns out you don't have to pay that much, you know, I
Right.
think probably that just means the 5,000 gets returned to the CPC, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
we're happy to work out a solution to the parking separately and fundraise
Yeah.
and help with that.
CPC, well, could we
CPC
possibly?
could award the money at a different time. We could
Well, that's
not
what I was
spend it.
wondering.
Yeah, yeah. So it could be a separate CPC article at
Yeah,
a,
if it's a CPC requirement, we could just put it on annual.
yeah. It could just go on the annual town meeting. That's fine.
And
So
then
as long
just
as we
need to
can,
change the grant agreement to
Agreement to
45
45.
rather than
Yep.
50.
yes,
And I guess you take the 5 out of the budget reserve.
yes.
Yeah.
And then what we would do, Mateo, is when we meet, we will just amend that grant agreement to reflect $45,000, take the parking out, and we'll deal with the parking in a separate article. Does that work?
Seems like that would work.
So does that mean you need a meeting?
We have a meeting scheduled anyway. The CPC is meeting on the 18th,
All
so
right.
And it can't happen till the annual town meeting, right?
No, they can change the grant agreement. They
Yeah.
can vote to change the
Yeah.
grant agreement before the annual. It's the annual that they
Right.
would have to approve the 5,000.
Right, that's what I'm
Right,
saying. You
right.
can't do the action until the annual town meeting to vote the 5,000.
right, that's right.
Right,
We
but-
do that at annual town meeting.
They need to meet to amend the grant agreement so we can get that signed for the closing.
Okay, great.
Well, this is easy.
Told you it was gonna be fun. Okay, we are way over our schedule here, but I think we have now dealt with the first article for the special town meeting. So are we clear on this language is as it stands, Becky, because the select board needs to vote tonight on posting this warrant.
So my only question is for Donna. Donna, you had recommended some select board votes
Right.
that I had, they're right. Okay, sorry.
And that's not for the warrant, though. That's for the contract with DCR.
So does that that has to happen tonight too, though, right?
Yes, that's more important than the warrant as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, no, you have to have that vote and get those documents signed and get them off to DCR by PDF tomorrow and mail and hope, and then we keep our fingers crossed that the 197 comes in.
All right. I apologize. I had the vote right there, but it went somewhere. Let me just bring it back up. Contract. Motions, select board. Not the right one.
Rita, while she's looking, my camera is updating, so I'll be off
Okay,
visually for a
Okay.
moment.
thanks, Melissa.
You're welcome.
Rita, you really only scheduled this for 25 minutes? What were you
I
thinking?
don't do that. And that was Becky's very optimistic.
Really optimistic, Becky, really
Oh,
optimistic.
Well, I thought everyone had settled everything on Thursday and that was before the weekend started.
Should have known better.
Yeah, should have gone back to it. But here is, Donna, these are the select board motions you recommended happen tonight.
Right.
Okay. All right, so Eric and Melissa, do one of you want to make a motion as presented here?
I can, should we read it or is it sufficient that
Oh,
it's
go ahead and
on
read
the
it.
screen? I
And
move the
there's a
select
third
board.
I'm sorry, Eric, there's the third one is also a motion, I believe. The third.
Yeah, it is. Sorry, I forgot my numbering.
I move the select board enter into a contract with the Department of Conservation and Recreation for the purpose of receiving funds through the Department of Conservation and Recreation as the Commonwealth's lead agency for the federally funded Forest Legacy Program, and to have these funds transferred to the town of Shutesbury in accordance with the West Quabbin Woodlands Forest Legacy Project grant agreement and narratives, so the town may acquire and hold the interest. It may hold interest in the land in its own name. The estimated amount of the funds to be received is $197,716.13. Pretty good estimate.
I'll
Is there-
second that.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Nope.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Make peace, O'Neill, aye.
Stalker, aye.
Carol, I. Melissa, why don't you read the second one so we don't?
Okay,
Eric's
sure.
losing his voice. Yeah.
I move that the select board chair, Rita Farrell, be authorized to execute the contract between the town of Shutesbury and the Commonwealth Department of Conservation and Recreation on behalf of the select board and the town of Shutesbury, and be authorized to execute any and all other documents necessary to acquire the grant funds, and be authorized to execute any and all documents required to purchase the property located at 0 Pelham Hill Road, Shutesbury, Franklin County, Mass, including but not limited to the notice of the grant agreement, conservation restriction to the Kestrel Trust Incorporated, and any grant agreement.
Is there a second?
Second,
Any further discussion? All
Nope.
those in favor signify by saying aye.
Makepeace, O'Neill, aye.
Stalker, aye.
Carol, I. How about if I read the last one?
Oh, sure.
Go for it.
Okay, I move that the select board and Chair Rita Farrell execute the contractor authorized signatory listing form to accompany the contract, and to confirm Rita Farrell to be the party authorized to execute any and all necessary documents with the Commonwealth Department of Conservation and Recreation, and to confirm
Oops.
his
her
signature. Okay,
Right.
her signature. Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Makepeace, O'Neill, aye.
Stalker, aye.
Farrell, aye.
Now, Becky, you have the contract?
I have the original contract. Have you made any amendments?
No, the original contract gets signed.
Okay. I believe I do have that, and
And then attached to that should be the contractor authorized signature listing.
yep,
And that's the other document that the select board just authorized to be signed.
Donna, you didn't have any corrections to that contract?
You
The
can't
Appendix
correct those
B?
contracts, Miriam. The Commonwealth doesn't correct
Okay.
contracts.
No, I thought you had some editing changes to that draft,
To what?
to the Appendix B, the contract agreement.
No, the Commonwealth doesn't allow you to edit, and I don't have an Appendix B. All I have is the contract and the contractor authorized signatory listing.
Okay, there was an Appendix B that was part of it. Bridget, do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
The grant agreement, maybe it was called. There was two
Are you
documents.
talking about what gets attached to the deed? Like the grant agreement gets attached to the deed?
I'm not sure if it was attached to the deed or if it had to go with, I have to go back and look at the emails, but there was a document you gave us, which I have it open on my computer, but
Yeah, I can.
it said Appendix B, and I thought it was
There's no
attached.
Appendix B referenced in the contract that I see.
So I can open it up. It was here, I'm opening up, it's notice of a grant agreement. And it has this preamble and then in witness thereof, and it's signed. It's 2 pages long.
That was attached to the deed though, not to the contract, right?
Okay. I
Yeah.
thought that also had to be included with the contract. No? Okay,
Yeah.
great.
If it does, we'll get it right to them. This authorizes Miriam to sign, Rita to sign
Rita,
everything.
yeah.
So,
and I just use a standard contractor signatory page. Because I think the ones that were there were just samples, right?
right, you're gonna have a blank one.
I have to get a blank one.
And for privacy purposes, do not attach any documents containing personal information, blah, blah, blah. So the authorized signatory name will be Rita Farrell.
Yeah.
Chair, Shutesbury Select Board. And then she's going to sign, date it, put her title, phone number, fax, and email. And then she's going to put her title on the second page and sign. And then Susie is going to certify, notarize, and certify.
Well,
Grace,
let
Grace.
Grace do it.
What?
Grace.
Let Grace do it.
Oh, Grace, fine. Sorry. What am I saying, Sue? Sorry.
That's okay.
Generation behind. And that will accompany the contract.
Okay.
It's mainly for them to just see Rita's signature and basically be able to compare them. That's all it does.
Okay.
We all set now?
Unless anybody has any questions. Bridget,
Okay,
you're on the
well,
phone. All right, no, we settled on the 5,000, never mind.
yeah.
I think we're all good on
Yeah.
this whole issue.
All right, well,
Right,
thank
everybody,
you.
Fingers crossed that the 197 comes in.
Right. Thank you, Donna, Miriam, Mateo, Becky, everybody who's
Bridget,
everybody who's been having such a fun time with this. Believe it or not, this discussion has been going on for at least 2 weeks. So you're just getting a small taste of it tonight. But we got there, and we have the warrant articles for, warrant articles for the first of the articles for special town meeting. Okay, so that's taken care of. Becky, do you want to put up the warrant, the draft warrant?
Yes.
So now we're
are you done
on
with me or should I stay?
to,
The
you-
planning board amendment, are there any issues with that?
Nope, you did it right.
the solar bylaw, we're all set.
Oh, let me see that one to make sure the changes were made.
Okay.
Not the whole bylaw, just the article.
It's number 3.
Okay. Do you want
And
to
I
just,
think
we'll
for-
skip ahead to that. Oh, it is number 3. Okay, perfect.
Okay.
So let's go to the solar bylaw amendment article, which is in the draft warrant here, number 3. Michael, do you or you
I
wanna
can,
just
I
give
can
us?
speak to it. Before I start, I just want to say, we posted as a planning board meeting, but I think there's only me, Jeff Lacey, and Jeff Weston. But Becky, if you see someone else pop on, let me know, and then we can call us to order, because I don't want to be out of order. But right
Okay.
now, we don't have a quorum. So Rita, do you want me to just summarize it?
Yeah, just a quick summary of what the major changes are to our existing solar bylaw.
Okay. Well, I'll preface it by saying the select board now has the planning board report to town meeting that the planning board approved a month or so ago, and Grace has it as well. And there's the handout that Rita had suggested, which is an excerpt of that report. All of those documents are on the website, and the select board and Grace and Becky have them. So I think all the background material is there. In summary, and I'm sort of going from memory, so Jeff Lacey, if I forget something, the primary reason for doing this solar bylaw is that in June of this year, the Supreme Judicial Court heard a solar bylaw case, Tracer Lane versus Waltham. And the upshot of that was that the planning board, in consultation with Donna, felt like we had to make explicit what our underlying rationales were, because the SJC said that you could reasonably regulate as a municipality for solar if it was connected to public health, welfare, and safety. And so the primary mover for why we're bringing this forward was to make those fundamental assumptions and rationales very clear. So that's sort of the first new part. We folded in as well non-residential energy storage. You know, we had a bylaw that came forth at annual town meeting and there was some lack of clarity. So this made it more clear that it was not talking, it was only about non-residential. And there's also an addition in the use table. And then there's a whole bunch of smaller things that are in the report in terms of clarifications about water and noise and historic preservation, et cetera, et cetera. But I'd say the primary mover and shaker really was the SJC, and then the planning board's desire to clarify how to regulate energy storage systems. Jeff, did I leave anything out?
No, that was brief to the point. I mean, I don't think the bylaw is in a tangible way stricter. There are some more requirements, things that have to be accounted for and submitted in the applications. I think the bylaw is more defensible because we took our lead from the two cases that have been decided since we passed the first one. And then we dealt with the issue of battery storage, getting it in there because that's a part of all these projects now, and dealing with some homeowner concerns in that area. So yeah, that was a good summary.
Questions, Eric or Melissa?
I don't think I have any.
Eric?
Trying to scroll back.
I'm unmuting. No, I don't think I have any either. I've read this over and over, and I don't. I have some issues with a couple of things, but that's personal issues, and they're a little minor. So I would say, yeah, this is all good. It's good work.
Yeah.
Just a procedural question. Are we didn't take did we take a vote on the first two articles? Or do we just going to vote on the warrant as a whole? Becky, you have any
I think
recommendation?
you weren't on that. I'm sorry, you vote on them individually,
Okay,
individual articles.
okay. So why don't we vote on this one and then we have to go back, and I don't believe we voted on the other two.
Right.
Okay, we're really behind schedule here. So if somebody has a quick question or two from the audience, you can raise your hand and okay. Thank you, Michael, for doing a summary, because there's
Yeah,
Susie.
Susie Mosher
Yep.
raised her hand.
Okay, now I see it. Yeah. Okay, Susie, go ahead.
I'm wondering why Article 3 is on a special town meeting warrant instead of that annual town meeting, especially because this will be an indoor meeting and you would want people to come in and pay attention to this article, but there's going to be people who won't come because of the COVID indoor part.
I can attempt to answer that. Maybe Jeff can fill in. As I said, the thing that we were concerned about after the SJC decision was our current bylaw we feel good about and it's defensible, but in light of the SJC decision, it really has to be explicitly tied to public health, welfare, and safety. So, as Jeff said, it's not particularly more rigid, and most of it is the same. The only two, there's small additions throughout, but the two big additions are really the rationale, which doesn't change anything, it just makes things explicit. And then the energy storage, which is discussed fully in town meeting and the planning board addressed and clarified. So there's a sense that we want to make sure that our bylaw legally is more intact, and timing was important. And planning board discussed it in the summer with the idea that if there was a special town meeting that we would bring it forth. So that has been the discussion in all our public meetings since the summer. Jeff, would you add anything?
Yeah, I would say that this is not a new bylaw on the scene. The thrust of this bylaw is pretty much the same as the last one that the town voted for at an annual, overwhelmingly. This has just been fortified and made defensible, and planning board would always want to have a more defensible bylaw on the books as soon as possible, so that it pertains to what may come in. So, I mean, that's our interest. You know, we don't think we're introducing anything brand new to the town for the town to digest. Mostly what we did was legal things. So we want this bylaw in place as soon as possible. And we've done all of our homework and had our hearing, and I think it's ready to go.
Okay, any other comments?
I see Becky's hand, Trina.
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick question, Jeff. How long is a hearing good for before you would have to redo it?
6 months.
6
And we
months?
had the hearing in October.
So you're in good shape there.
Yes.
Okay, since I mentioned it, why don't we go ahead and we'll do this article and then backtrack the end to Articles 1 and 2. So do I hear a motion to approve Article 3 as presented for the solar bylaw amendment?
So moved.
Second,
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Makepeace O'Neill, aye.
Stalker, aye.
Farrell, aye. Okay, let's keep going here.
Rita, just real quick, could I
Yep.
confirm with Jeff and Michael? So the full section, the 16-page full bylaw, I will have available to people, and we're going to post online with the warrant. Or
Yeah,
do you prefer the full 16-page text be put in the warrant?
I think the report to the town meeting, which is only 5 pages, is probably more digestible and therefore more informative to residents. So I would include that maybe in the warrant, but all the full bylaw, the report, and the 2-page are all on the planning board website right now, so you can link to them. And I would say if you do a town mailing, doing the 2-page handout, it's
Yeah.
double-sided handout would be the way to go.
We don't have time to do the mailing.
Oh, okay. Well, if you do a town announce, the link is there.
Okay, thank you.
Becky, the warrant says the following new section, which would indicate that it would be in the warrant. If
So
you're
we do
going
need to
to
vote on
have it
that.
as an attachment or a handout, you need to change that.
So we should put it in the warrant. It's just
Yeah.
as easy to put it in the warrant.
Yeah, just put it in the warrant. That's what is indicated here, and you certainly don't want a summary in the warrant.
Right, I wasn't gonna do that. Thank you. Thank you, Donna.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's move on to Article 4,
Okay,
proposed Article 4.
all right.
Becky, do you want to take this one?
Yes, as many of you are aware, in December 18th, we received a letter from Department of Environmental Protection, which was a notice of responsibility for the fire station PFAS that has been discovered in the last 2 years. We have taken a number of proactive steps over the past 18 months, including putting in 5 poets in all the facilities, homes, and 2 town facilities that were tested over 20 parts per trillion of the 6 PFAS that are regulated. So the requirement was for the town to hire an LSP. We have reached out and been working to tie in bond. We are working with an LSP named Jeffrey Arps. He was on the state task force for PFAS a number of years ago. And this has been his focus professionally is on PFAS. And he has been working with us to put together a program that satisfies the notice of responsibility. The firm Tie and Bond has been working with me to identify what parts the town can pay directly. We have a relationship with Contest Labs, and we will be utilizing them to save at least a 10% markup on all lab work. So this article represents a large sum of money that will be needed. It's $136,948. $42,000 is the proposal from Tie and Bond for all their hourly work. The direct costs include all the lab testing and poets that would be required for people's homes. We currently have 5. We have been going with the single vessel poets. For anyone over 20, it has been recommended that we change those out for double vessel poets. Those come at a cost of $3,800 a piece. The single vessel that we've been using are $1,500 a piece. The recommendation is also that any people that have tested under 20 parts per trillion have installed by the town a single vessel poet. The alternative to doing that is to provide bottled water indefinitely to all of those homes. The cost after a number, I think it's 2 or 3 years, we will have exceeded the cost of putting in a poet just by providing bottled water. So the sooner.
Okay, can I just stop you there because poets might not be a familiar term to a lot of people. So can you?
Right.
We know it's not people who write poetry, but it's rather a filtration system. Is that right?
That's correct. It's a point of entry filtration system. It's basically a tank with carbon in it. It's the carbon that the water runs through that removes the PFAS from the water. Thank you. So I put together, working with Mr. Arps, I put together the estimate of all the different criteria that they will apply and the numbers of households. We're working with between 48 and 50 households. One of them is vacant and will become active. And all of those households will require quarterly testing at $248 per test. And they will, so 50 households and for $248 every time we have to test. And we will begin with what has been recommended by DEP. And then hopefully as we develop trend reports and calculations from experience, Mr. Arps has said that he has been able in other communities to reduce the frequency of testing once we have better identified the flow and the trends on the potential movement of the PFAS. So this is heavily weighted. The 94,000 is about $60,000 for testing, a little bit under, and $37,000 estimated for new poet units. I've estimated 5 new single source, single poets and 5 double vessel poets, in addition to those that are already going to be required that we know about. So this will be something of a new part of Shutesbury's reality. This is heavy money up front because of the poets, but the hope is by investing in the poets, we will be reducing the required testing over time. So we hope to find a way to minimize these costs, and it's possible it's an overestimate. If everything stays, if no new detections are made in the testing of the 50 households and facilities, this could be a little bit of an overestimate, but the money could still be used in the next year for further lab work if we are overestimating in the dollar amount for poets.
Okay, questions, Melissa, Eric?
Well, yeah, it's a little shocking, but good. I mean, it's good it's happening. There's no question about it. One question I have is, I would assume, and I don't know this as a scientist or anything, but I would assume that there must be an ongoing maintenance plan for the poets. To me, if they're filtering with charcoal, the charcoal must at some point need to be replaced. And what do you know about that, Becky? Anything?
Yes, there will be maintenance costs. I just ordered the first new filter for one of the homes that we are providing a poet for. The cost for a single filter, a single poet, the filter is $450, and we will be, I'm not sure if we're going to actually move ahead with that because we'll most likely be replacing it for a double unit. And we about once a year, you want to be testing to make sure that the carbon has not allowed a breakthrough. And that we just went through a series of testing of all the existing poets. That was the first requirement made by the DEP notice of responsibility. We have just done that, and we will be addressing that. So yep, maintenance costs are not included in this first round. We are this round trying to determine basically setting up the infrastructure that we will need. And that will be, the maintenance will be calculated once our numbers are a bit more settled on who we are responsible for and what type of unit they will need.
Right. There'll have to be some sort of line item in the budget, I assume, for the future expenditures in that regard.
Yes.
Okay.
Melissa, any questions? Okay, so, yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to go ahead and entertain a motion. Les, I see your hand up. We are like way behind schedule. So I would say, I'd ask you to, if you have questions concerning this article, we're voting tonight on whether or not to approve this, not to discuss the systems. So I'm not going to take any questions. Do I hear a motion to approve
Black sheet now too.
Article 4? Les, your microphone is on.
Okay.
Please mute yourself. Thank you. Do I hear a motion to approve Article 4?
So moved.
So moved. I would make the exception. I think I would spell out what poets are on the warrant so that people sitting in the town meeting will have an idea what they're talking about here. That's all. But other than that,
Okay. I
think that's a good
find out
idea.
what the T stands for, but I definitely will do that.
Treatment system.
treatment. I
That's
think it's
right.
point of entry treatment system. I think is
You
what
got
it
it,
is.
treatment.
All right. It's like doing Wordle.
Okay, a motion's been made and seconded to approve Article 4 as being amended right now. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Makepeace O'Neill, aye.
Stalker eye.
Farrell, aye. Okay, Article 5, we discussed this earlier. This is to see if the town will vote to transfer from free cash $18,602.50 for Vadar Financial Software for the town tax collector. Eric or Melissa, do you have any additional questions about this? Ellen gave a pretty thorough explanation earlier in the meeting.
I do not have any more questions.
I'm all set as well.
Okay, so I hear a motion to approve that $18,602.
So moved.
Second,
Any additional questions?
Nope.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Makepeace O'Neill, aye.
Stalker eye.
Carol, aye. I believe this is the last article is on community choice aggregation. No?
I just want to check with Donna and Michael. Is this moving forward or not moving forward? Because of the MLP issue.
Michael, you're on mute.
Donna's still there, so I'll let her talk for herself. I didn't see you, Donna. You talk.
I raised the issue where the way the statute was written, whether or not an MLP, it says that you can't do this if you have an MLP. And the assumption has been from communities across the Commonwealth that if you have an MLP for broadband, the statute doesn't apply. So we went to DPU. Their initial ruling was yes, if you have an MLP just for broadband, it doesn't apply. And Friday, I think it was, the person at DPU withdrew that opinion and said that as far as DPU's looking into it, but as of right now, if you have an MLP, regardless of the reason for the MLP or the functions of the MLP, you can't do this, even though there's a lot of communities that have done it. So I don't think it should be on the warrant at this stage of the game. Michael, how do you feel about it?
I didn't see that email where they withdrew it, so I guess.
You didn't see that?
No.
Oh, you missed a good one.
I thought you
Yeah,
sent it
really.
to me.
I saw it. I read it too, Donna. I can forward
Yeah.
it to you, Michael.
The last one I saw was that she said that it was okay and they were going to send an official email followed by an official letter.
Right, no, she sent an email, I thought it was to you, apologizing and saying she had to withdraw it.
I totally didn't see that. I can double check. So, I mean, I guess it's up to the select board. I mean, we can definitely do it at annual town meeting. You know, what Donna and I had talked about initially before we got this communication was putting it on the warrant, and if we didn't have anything close to the 19th, pulling it. So there's always that opportunity, but you know, on the other hand, if we want to see clarification, we already have a complicated night meeting.
Yeah.
I would say that we don't, you know, we can go forward in annual town meeting with concrete clarity if we get concrete clarity in the affirmative.
That
So I
seems
guess
like a good plan to me.
Pull it.
So we're pulling it tonight?
Is that the agreement?
Yeah, I would pull it. Michael, we'll get you that email. I thought it was to you. I thought they apologized to you for giving you the initial opinion. If Becky can't find it, I'll make sure you
think
get it
came
tomorrow.
from, it came from Mark Rabin, no.
No, Mark Rubinski forwarded the email from the woman at DPU that when she said yes, and that was the last I
But I
saw.
think Michael, here's the email. Michael, unfortunately, I need to backtrack on how the last email from DPU can be used, and any optimism for a response before the town's special town meeting. I spoke with DPU and DPU let me know that the email from Kate regarding the municipal aggregation statute cannot be substituted or used as formal guidance on the matter. They also said that because of the change in commission, would not be possible to issue any formal guidance before the Shutesbury's special town meeting next month. I'm very sorry about the misunderstanding. Mark.
Got
Oh,
it.
and then it goes on and on.
1 minute.
But he's
Almost done.
sorry again and again.
Yeah.
Wrong.
So in part, this is because we have a new administration coming in and no one wants to sort of step in it, I would think. But yeah, we could pull it. Having heard that, that only makes sense.
Sorry, I raised the issue.
Bring
No,
back
I-
Charlie Baker.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
Somebody's not muted from the audience. I think Susie, maybe it's you. Okay, so they want to move back up to the first two articles then and take a vote on those two articles for the special town meeting. So Article 1, we have discussed at length, is regarding the authorizing the town to purchase 0 Pelham Hill Road from the Kestrel Trust. So do I hear a motion to approve Article 1 as written?
So moved.
Second,
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Makepeace O'Neill, aye.
Stalker, aye.
Farrell, aye. Article 2 is regarding the conveyance of a conservation restriction to the Kestrel Trust and authorizing the town to do that. Is there a motion to approve Article 2 as written?
So moved.
Second,
Any further discussion?
Nope.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Makepeace O'Neill, aye.
Stalker, aye.
Farrell, aye. Okay, that is the warrant for the special town meeting on January 19th at 6 o'clock, and it will be held at the Shutesbury Elementary School Gymnasium.
Okay.
We all set? That needs to be signed, Becky, by all 3 select board members, is that correct?
Yep.
So
At least 2.
at least 2. Okay, well, I'm coming in to sign a bunch of other stuff tomorrow, so I will be there in the morning.
Okay, and I'll get it printed out for you, Melissa, if you're are you coming by early?
I can either do it early or if you can do it, I have to run up to Lady Slipper Lane after, so.
Okay, I'm printing it now, so
Okay,
I'll have it for you.
okay.
Okay, last but not least, we have town administrator updates.
Given the length of the meeting, I want to share one special thing tonight from the town administrator's desk. We received news that the Green Communities Grant that was applied for this summer has been awarded.
Great.
For $178,503. It's the almost just shy of 100,000 is for all new lighting at the elementary school. The elementary school still has LEDs, so this is going to have a cost savings impact. And then the rest of the money is for weatherization in all our public buildings. So I just wanted to end on a positive note. Starting a new year, we'll have good things happening.
That's great.
Great. Becky, I just have a question about where things stand with the engineering and examination of the school roof.
Keeping fingers crossed for Thursday. I spoke with them again today. We are making another attempt. The snow is not on the roof at the moment. So hopefully if we can get in there on Thursday, and we can beat the snow on Friday.
Okay, anything else, Eric or Melissa? Questions?
Nope.
So I know for the next meeting, we have the job site rules, and is there anything else that came up tonight that we want to make sure is on the agenda for the next time?
The designer contract.
Oh, the designer contract, right,
Right.
things that we passed over. Yep.
Mhm.
And then
for
probably some
sign-
appointments too.
Yes. The appointment for CPC.
Great. And encourage everybody to come next week, if you can, to the MVP meeting. And thank you all for your presence this evening. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second,
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Make Peace O'Neill, aye.
Stalker eye.
Carol, aye. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.